I'm watching another Corey Anton video from back in 2012, April 19th. It was published. Good Faith Arguments and Big Issues 2. It says Tool Time 9901. I don't know what that's about. At about 16 minutes into the talk, Corey asks for what is wrong with the idea that science might be able to be knitted into a whole cloth. That's what it sounds like he's asking in the video. It it looks to me like it can be, and except for what can't fit into it. If there are miracles and if God exists in some way, shape, or form, and that just won't fit into the scientific paradigm, then it's just not going to happen. If there are these different worlds, Corey also mentioned something about the world, what that means. If it turns out there are different universes, there are different dimensions with different laws of physics that they intersect on this planet Earth at times, and they pass through each other, and the reductionistic scientific view paradigm project just cannot do that. It will never be able to do that. Well, then that would be a problem. I like the idea that physics could be at the root of chemistry, which is at the root of biology, and that's at the root of psychology, and that's at the root of sociology. And it can all be, even though there might be some quantum leaping going on and emergence that cannot be explained solely on the one hand by some order of science below it or above it, that there are things that cannot be accounted for, but it seems to me as though it's still possible. And I'm not exactly sure how the logic goes that given the way things emerge, they were not anticipated. That small perturbations in something, the butterfly effect can vastly influence the outcome. It might suggest that it's impossible to predict, that science might run into problems ultimately forecasting or explaining before the fact. The predictive ability of science might be limited due to the nature of there being so many variables that just can't be accounted for. So there's a problem on that level. But I really like the idea of the potential for there being a theory of everything, and I think that's what I try to get at in mapping consciousness, whether it's a discrete phenomena on the one hand or an analog phenomena on the other hand, phenomenon, whether the views taken of a world, a state, a reality, a reification, if all the views, if all the maps could be laid one on top of the other as transparencies, and an entire body, such as the human body, could be presented through all of these transparencies, then there might be something to that. But even with all that, from the inside out, you can take an MRI of a brain or something and scan it piece by piece and see this is what's going on inside the brain. But that might be different from what it feels like when someone is actually doing something. It feels like I have free will, even if science can explain all of that away. They say, no, that's just a feeling, doesn't exist. But if I feel like it does, or if I choose to believe that it does, well, that's another sort of a kettle of fish. To believe in science, to believe in anything, is a form of make-believing, I would say, to make up stories, however mythological or whatever facts can be mustered to support the story. It ends up being a story. It ends up being an explanation. The map could be said to be not the territory in many ways at many times, and sometimes the map is the territory. Entering into a map, a paradigm, might be part of the story. The glory of the story of science can be pretty wonderful, assuming there is some kind of an Indra god that exists on some level, and there's some glory to that story for an age. That's pretty fantastic. If it's true, it's true. If from an atheistic view there is no need for God or a creator, that reality simply unfolds the way it does, whatever the word reality means, it's mindless, it doesn't care, it's like water. Reality, whatever that is, gives birth to everything. There's no intention behind it, there's no will behind it. Well, that's a point of view. The other point of view that, oh no, there was a creative act, an intentional, teleological endpoint to which all things are moving, to which consciousness is moving as the self plays hide and seek. That's another kind of a story. I tend to look at it from one way and another way and a third way and a fourth way and keep on looking sort of kaleidoscopically. And that's just sort of how my mind works. The idea that there are these discrete states of consciousness has some appeal to me at the moment. So to apply a quantum type theory to consciousness, that just as with atoms, a state, be it a particle or a wave, exists at certain levels, and then all of a sudden, boom, there's another level. People might jump from individual states to family, group, tribal, nation states, planetary states, cosmic states of consciousness, feel as if they are the universe, feel as if they are alienated, depending on with what they identify at any given time. It could be that there is a all-knowing energy form, and as it moves through time and decelerates and cools down, it becomes stars and planets and people flowering, and then again it mushrooms, it returns to itself. And to know linearly rather than all at once every little detail, that might involve some sort of epistemology. Surely the numbers of hairs on everybody's head exist. When a sparrow falls out of a tree, the universe knows that in a way. If the universe spoke, would anybody listen? To think that there is a universe that's speaking to anyone and everyone, and that we are other than it, that can be a kind of a thought. Corey mentioned something about Descartes and his horse. I don't know how often I fall into or out of that one. I really like this image that Corey threw out at about 19 and a half minutes into the talk. The image of the world, the Earth, from orbit as having a right side up. That's beautiful. Normally when I adopt this absolute frame of reference as if there were one of the Earth spinning around, the North Pole is always pointing up. And that's a good one. Everybody knows the Earth is really pointing the other way. Corey gives me a lot to think about. That's why I like watching him. The feeling that one is an instance of the Earth, the realization that there is no separation. Sometimes Corey asks if a person is in the world or of the world. I might go so far as to say there is a view such that one is the world and the world is one. There is not two in that view. But, and then again, that's a view, that's a story, that's a differentiation. Chuang Tzu once wrote that he would like to find someone who had forgotten words because he'd like to have a word with him. Without differentiating, to be totally undifferentiated, there would be little, if anything, one could say. And there goes the story. It ends with "to begin with."